Hi there, I'm Jennifer from English with Jennifer. Learning a language is more than grammar and vocabulary. It's also about learning to navigate social customs. Here are 6 things you need to know if you're new to the US or planning to visit. Number 1, leave a tip. The tipping culture is getting a bit out of control here, but you can't avoid it. Tipping for most services is expected, especially in a restaurant, where we pay 15 to 20%. It's also not really cool to leave a bunch of coins, especially pennies. So if you're tipping with cash, round up and use dollar bills. I'd say 20% is the new norm at restaurants. With fast food, you don't need to tip. If you're ordering for pickup or takeout, it's up to you. Was the food ready on time? Did they pack it nicely? Did they forget anything? 15% is fine. At a cafe where you might order coffee or baked goods, you're invited to tip. Not everyone does because you're not being served at a table. But if you're making very specific requests, you should leave something. How about $1 for a specially made coffee? I try to thank my hairstylist by tipping 25% because I've been going to her for years. Otherwise, 20% is already generous for a hairstylist or barber. Let's talk about traveling within the US. If I take a shuttle to the airport, I tip the driver $1 to $2, especially if he helps me with my heavy suitcase. At a hotel, I'll tip house cleaning a few dollars a day. There's a lot to know about the tipping culture in America, but that should be enough to get you started. You'll figure out the rest as you spend time here and observe practices. Tip number 2, use first names. In everyday situations here in the US, calling people by their first names is acceptable. At a doctor's office, at a job interview, or with my neighbors, I'd expect to be addressed by my first name, Jennifer. Titles of courtesy like Ms. Lebedev are rarely used, even in business email. Hello, Jennifer is already polite. And while you don't want to seem overly formal, you also don't want to come across as being too familiar. Often there are nicknames for common names like Rob or Bob for Robert. But here's a rule of thumb. Don't use a nickname unless the person invites you to, or if that's the name they use on all their social media accounts. So if you have a new colleague and she signs her name Elizabeth, don't call her Liz or Beth unless she asks you to. Tip number 3, become comfortable with chitchat. Americans are generally friendly, and making small talk happens in many public places. I do this quite a lot in stores when I interact with salespeople. Sometimes it's a quick exchange of comments or observations. It's less common in the waiting area of a doctor's office where privacy is respected, but in grocery stores, chit-chat with complete strangers happens while we're making our selections or while we're waiting in the checkout line. We can talk about the crowd, the weather, someone's cute kid, or a dog for that matter. Yes, sometimes you'll see dogs out shopping with their owners. Tip number 4, know the difference between service animals and pets. People with various disabilities are visible and functional within American society. Some people depend on service animals. They're usually identified by a special vest or harness. Even if you love dogs and have a special way with them, you shouldn't try to approach such an animal because it's there to take care of the owner's needs. As for a companion dog, ask for permission first if you want to approach it or pet it. Tip number 5, it's okay to have strangers take your photo. In tourist areas, Americans might offer to take your photo, or they might ask you to take theirs. I've never had anyone steal or drop my phone. It's okay to do this. You might take a couple of shots and then ask the people to check and see if they're happy. You can say, why don't you check and see if they're okay? By the way, you can also ask a server at a restaurant to take a group photo for you. Just remember to leave a tip. And the final tip, number 6, open a present when you receive it and show that you appreciate it. Here in the US, if someone wants to give you a present, I don't suggest immediately grabbing it and tearing into it, but the person probably wants you to open it then and there. You can ask, "Can I open it?" They'll probably say, "Of course," or "Please do." The only exception is if someone is giving you a present in advance, for example, before Christmas or before your birthday, because they won't see you on the actual day. Then you can ask, "Should I wait?" And you don't have to be super careful when you open a present. It's okay to tear the wrapping paper. Just be sure to smile and say thank you, and pay some kind of compliment like, "Oh wow, I love it," or "I really need this." At American birthday parties and baby showers, there's usually a time when everyone sits down and all the guests ooh and ah as the person of honor opens up each gift in turn. You'll be sure to get a thank you note within a few days. That's proper etiquette after such a party. Do you think you can remember all that? Let me quiz you on the most important rules. Number 1. In the US, it's common to tip 20% for services. True or false? True. 15 to 20% is still the norm, but 20% has become more popular, especially in restaurants. Number 2. Using a person's nickname is always the best way to be friendly. True or false? False. Use a nickname only if someone invites you to, or if that's how they identify themselves on social media and in all written correspondence. 3. Making small talk with complete strangers is acceptable in the US. True or false? True. In public places, chit-chat and casual comments are normal among strangers. Number 4. Service animals in the US are very friendly with strangers. True or false? False. Don't try to interact with a service animal. It's on duty. 5. Never ask Americans to take your photo unless you know them. True or false? False. It's fine to ask a stranger to take your photo in public, especially at a tourist spot. 6. It's usually acceptable to open a gift as soon as you receive it. True or false? True. You can ask permission first, but in American culture, it's completely normal to open a gift on the spot. How did you do? We'll end here. Please remember to like and share the video if you found the lesson useful. As always, thanks for watching and happy studies.